Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Painted Skin from 1993, Painted Skin from 2008, and Painted Skin 2, The Resurrection from 2012, which are a mix of Hong Kong and Chinese productions. Now, I was originally going to do a separate review for each film, but as I watched them, I found that the comparisons between them would be interesting to point out. So it simply makes more sense to do one combined review video. In addition, I do think that all three films are worth watching, which is one of the reasons why I'm reviewing them in the first place, since most of my standalone reviews on this channel are dedicated to movies that I find enjoyable. So let's move on here. Let's begin with Painted Skin from 1993. Wikipedia provides a nice little plot synopsis that I'm going to borrow here. A scholar, played by Adam Cheng, encounters a beautiful maiden, played by Joey Wong, also known as Joey Wang, in an alley on his way home and leads her to his house, where he tries to marry her as a concubine. By chance, his wife and he discover that she is in fact a ghost, who must paint and graft a facial skin mask over her face to look human. Terrified, the scholar enlists the help of two Taoist priests, who give him a magic whisk to keep the ghost at bay. However, it appears that this ghost is rather benign. She merely wants to escape the clutches of an evil Yin-Yang King, a faceless, powerful spirit king who shuttles at ease between the mortal world and the spirit, and who seems to be controlling the destinies of some recently deceased souls. Now, one thing I noticed while watching this 1993 version is that the story is more straightforward than the versions from the 2000s. For example, the ghost in this film, as you might expect from the plot synopsis, is basically a protagonist for much of the runtime. She's not much of a threat to the other protagonists at any point in the film. And in that sense, the 1993 film does lack some of the nuance and multidimensionality of its successors. In addition, if you're familiar with the Hong Kong fantasy cinema flicks from the late 80s or early 90s, this entry may feel slightly run-of-the-mill when compared to some of the stronger films that were released during that era. But with that said, I did enjoy this because of its overall quality. The story, the acting, and the direction are all good here. This was directed by King Hu, who contributed a handful of other highly acclaimed films from the prior decades. He's very good at creating mood, and this is certainly an atmospheric film. I especially liked the dark blue lighting that was used during the nighttime scenes. There's also a creepy shot involving the girl's face, the ghost girl's face, which is quite effective. Special effects are very practical, which actually helps to avoid some of the bad CGI that would pop up in some of the adaptations from the 2000s, so that's an advantage. And finally, Sammo Hung has a supporting role, and it's always nice to see him. So the positives outweigh the negatives here. For this Painted Skin film from 1993, I enjoyed it. So let's move on to Painted Skin from 2008. Now, during the Qin and Han era, Commander Wang Shen leads his troops in a raid on bandits in the desert. In the process, he rescues a beautiful woman, played by Zhou Xun, and brings her back with them. However, he has no idea that this woman is in fact a fox spirit in human form. She needs a regular supply of human hearts to maintain her human form, and the task of killing falls on her helper, Zhao Yi, a desert chameleon who has also taken on human form and has a special ability to blend in and melt into his environments. Now, consequently, he carries out a series of murders that terrorize the city. Meanwhile, the fox spirit attempts to seduce Wang Shen from his wife, played by Zhao Wei, who begins to suspect that this woman may not be human. So from that plot synopsis, you can probably tell that the 2008 film is very different from the 1993 version. It has the same general premise, I guess you could say, but it's dissimilar in a lot of ways. And that's one of the things that struck me and stuck out to me when I rewatched all of these films recently. They are all distinguishable from one another, and that's a good thing. Now, the fox spirit is far more dangerous and ruthless in this 2008 film, meaning that she's an actual threat. We definitely root for Zhao Wei's character to find out that Zhou Xun is a fox spirit, but an even bigger problem is how to persuade everyone else in the town of this fact. You know, the fox spirit is very popular with nearby residents because, in her human form, she manipulates other humans to her advantage. And one of those humans is Zhao Wei's husband. So this situation provides plentiful conflict between the two ladies. There's also more nuance and multidimensionality to this movie, both in terms of how the fox spirit interacts with the humans, as well as how the plot unfolds and how each character contributes to the finale. Now, the 2008 film does have a few moments of pretty bad CGI, which prevents it from being as grounded as the 1993 version. You know, the CGI is definitely bad enough that it kind of takes you out of the film a little bit, but it's only used on a limited basis, so it's not that big of a deal, I think. Regardless, this film actually still maintains a certain groundedness in terms of how the story unfolds and the fact that it focuses more on establishing characters over being a big budget spectacle. It doesn't feel like just a big budget fluff piece. You know, it actually has characters and story to it. This is more of a fantasy, drama, romance, thriller hybrid than anything else. But it does have a few notable action scenes, one of which uses reflecting light and a unique sword to nice effect. So I like that. Now, Zhou Xun and Zhao Wei are among the best actresses in the world, so having both of them here is a huge plus for me personally. And the fact that they interact in a game of cat and mouse is sufficiently satisfying. And as an added bonus, our boy Donnie Yen has an important supporting role, and Betty Sun is quite good as the inexperienced demon hunter. So, one other thing that I want to mention are the scene transitions. Some of the editing in this movie was a bit awkward, because one scene would transition to another using like a quick fade out and then fade in. They make it feel like at times like a television production. And this seems to be a bigger problem during the first half as opposed to the second half. So I think that's something that the filmmakers could have cleaned up a little bit. But when all is said and done, I enjoyed this 2008 version even more after rewatching it recently. First time I saw it was like 10 years ago, and it actually held up even better than what I remembered. It's actually better than how I remembered, definitely. And I actually prefer it to its predecessor. So, yeah, it's a good one. And now finally, we've reached Painted Skin 2: The Resurrection from 2012. Now, according to demon lore, it takes hundreds of years to attain human form. Even then, lacking a human heart, a demon cannot experience the true pains and passions of existence. However, there is a legend that if a pure human heart is freely offered to the demon, it can become mortal and experience true life. So after a 500-year slumber, a fox spirit, played by Zhou Xun again, is released from her icy prison by a bird demon and seeks to manipulate a scarred princess, played by Zhao Wei, into purposely giving her heart away, despite the fact that the princess is in love with a military general. And just to be clear here, this is essentially a half-sequel to the 2008 film. You know, Zhou Xun is credited as playing the same fox spirit character, I think, but Zhao Wei and Ken Chun return to play different human characters. So it's kind of interesting how they kept the cast, but they played different characters. So the viewer could assume that this film takes place hundreds of years after the events of the prior film and is an actual sequel with just a change up in characters. Or you could treat it as a standalone spin-off. So whatever floats your boat, I think, would work. Now, it seems like a simplistic story from what I mentioned, but this 2012 film has the most interesting story and character dynamics of the films in this franchise, in my opinion. There is actually quite a bit of intricacy behind the character motivations here, and that's especially true for both female leads, who not only have good cat and mouse conflicts again, but also have some genuinely well-written cooperation and understanding between them that leads to some very interesting plot lines during the second half. In fact, I would say that the script writing in this movie demands quite a bit from the actresses, given the character turns and character arcs, and they pull it off quite magnificently. So like the 2008 version, unfortunately, there is some bad CGI at times that kind of takes you out of the film, but there are some positive aspects that kind of compensate for it. Even visually, this film is actually very nice to look at. probably more gorgeous than its predecessors. And there are multiple scenes involving water that are pretty freaking stunning and memorable. So I did very much enjoy as well the more sensual presentation of the characters in this 2012 film. Zhou Xun definitely lays on the sex appeal in this, and it works. It does work. And most interestingly, some of the scenes between the two ladies are portrayed in a slightly sensual way that is both classy and kind of purposeful, I think. I mean, these characters have no romantic interest in one another at all. The ladies I'm talking about. But the staging of their interaction in a slightly sensual manner definitely helps to kind of bring the fantasy elements to life, because the fox spirit is a naturally seductive creature, so it makes sense that she would act that way. And I think when you see the movie, you'll agree with me on that. Now, like its predecessors, this is a genre bender, hits a lot of different genres, and it has minimal action. Don't go into these expecting action movies. In this one, there is one cool fight scene, I think near the end, involving the general and some rival army foot soldiers, a few of which are pretty intimidating looking. But again, do not go into this expecting an action film. This is a character and story-based fantasy that's anchored by two excellent actresses. So if that sounds good to you, check it out. So what about availability? Well, Painted Skin 1993 is available on YouTube with subtitles. Physical copies of that film are way too expensive nowadays. I see that film going for like $100+. Like, no. So, but you can't watch it on YouTube. Painted Skin from 2008 is available on VCD and Region 2 DVD. That's a UK release, which I assume has to have subtitles. And then Painted Skin 2, The Resurrection from 2012 is widely available on DVD, Blu-ray, and streaming in the United States. So you don't really have to watch these films in any order. I mean, I guess you could watch Painted Skin from 2008 before the one from 2012, in case you wanted to consider them, consider it to be a consistent story. But you probably want to watch both of those because you have the same three lead actors in both. But, if you can only find Painted Skin 2 right now, check it out. It's a pretty solid flick. And, yeah, this trilogy, I guess you could call it, was entertaining stuff. And as always, I will see you next time.